Hey guys, Stealth here and welcome back to Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, part of the tournament, because this is one of the videos that was sponsored by one of you guys. One of you wanted me to have a look at the ship, the Sisyphus Prime in this case. Sisyphus Prime unfortunately did not get selected. It would have been a very interesting contender, but he still wanted to get a video, and well, you can do so by joining a special Patreon tier, which is going to be ending soon as well as the tournament's ending soon. And for 50 bucks, you can get your own ship featured against one of the competitors in the tournament. So, let's have a look at the Sisyphus Prime. This ship displaces 40,000 tons. It's of Austro-Hungarian nature. She has a substantial amount of firepower. That's quad 18 inches. And that is quad 18 inches in dual turrets, or 2 turrets. So, 55-second reload's really good. Really high muzzle velocity and good range. Starting range is 20 kilometers, so you should be fine with 20 or with the 32 kilometer range. Reload combined with the amount of damage that these things can do has them pretty dangerous. You can see at 20 kilometers they can pen 39 inches of armor. That is a substantial pen. And how do they do that? Standard AP standard AP shells. This isn't even their final form yet. These shells can get a heck of a lot more powerful. When it comes to protection of the ship, Modern Armor 2, Barbette 3, Anti-Torp 4. That's a lot of torpedo protection. Triple hull bottom, reinforced bulkheads, Anti-Flood 3, and Citadel 4. Interesting. Not Citadel 5, so we get a Citadel 4. It is not the all or nothing, but it does give you more resistance. Generally, armor strength is a bit better. Yet, you still have... No, actually, flash fire isn't that bad. Let's see what the flash fire chance is for this ship. 0. Wow. This thing has no chance of flash fires. That's really good. Now, the Sisyphus Prime, sent in by King Swag, by the way, also comes with torpedo launchers. Quintuples, so that's 5 of them. Displacing 24 torpedoes, or 24-inch torpedoes, at 66 knots. So, short range, but really quick. And if you get hit by one of these, they hit really hard. I like the setup here. One looking port, one looking starboard, and one looking, well, all over the place. So they can put 10 torpedoes into the water, and after that they'll be reloading for about 15 minutes. Generally, battles don't last that long. Generally, torpedo launchers don't last that long at all because they just get wiped off the ship with a couple of blows of high explosive. When it comes to secondary armament, the ship has 5-inch guns, ranging out to 13 kilometers. These things are likely going to be firing high caps. Okay, not incendiary, but high cap. So slightly less fire chance. Which means that, for a change, we have an Austro-Hungarian ship that is not relying on fires, and I think that is really refreshing. Armor-wise, ooh, 14-inch main belt, 7-inch fore, 7 aft, 8 main. That's pretty good. But 2-inch superstructure. That's not a whole lot. That could leave the ship pretty vulnerable to losing her main tower. Secondary tower generally isn't that bad. If you lose this, well, it's more eh. This thing, however, damage control bonuses. You get about half the damage control bonus from the secondary tower, so it's not that bad. As for the rest, turrets, pretty heavily armored, but 8-inch top armor could be a problem. Could be a problem. Now, when I saw the ship, I thought this is a perfect contender for the Russians. Because the Russians are also forward-facing oriented with weaponry. They got 15 inches, so they're going to be firing faster. Let's see how it does against the Russians. Here we go. Pola, Sisyphus Prime, and Laudon. Unfortunately, all facing away from the enemy. So that puts them at a disadvantage. They first have to turn, they then have to turn their turrets, and only then will they be able to fire those mighty 18-inch guns. The Russians don't seem to have the same problem. These Russian battle cruisers, sporting their 8 15-inch guns, are pointing at the Austro-Hungarian ships and can open up. And have. Now the Russian ships, I thought are interesting competitors because they've got the same type of forward-facing armament. And then secondary 8-inch guns all over the place. This does put them at an advantage when it comes to rate of fire with the 15s, and also a range advantage with the 8s. But I believe that the Russian crews are not nearly as good as those of the Sisyphus Prime class, because these are veterans. These have a crew score of 100, meaning that they are generally ridiculously accurate. They are very good at finding range, so aim time is less, reload is less, well, less than normal, that is, not necessarily less than the Russians, because you won't beat that 15-inch reload. Ooh, that's getting close. Nope, nothing yet. The Pola did take a hit, but it only took 1% off the ship, so it's not that bad. Now you can see that the recoil from these 18s on the Sisyphus is definitely taking a while to recover from. Recoil is going down 10%, 9%, 8%. And with that, the accuracy slowly but certainly increases. These guys are way out of torpedo range. If the torpedoes even want to fire. And again, I'm running the tournament and such these videos as well. Ooh. Under 1.3.9.9. So not the new version of the game. This means that you're all going to get a similar result when it comes to fighting the same ship. Or the same type of ship. Now, again, the Austro-Hungarians have been struck. Can they deal some damage of their... Ooh, wow. That was an 18-inch hit that just ricocheted. They did get a partial pen on one of the main turrets of the Russians. And keep in mind, if that turret goes up, the chance of flash fire spreading to the other turret is pretty severe. Meaning that you could knock out one of these ships altogether in one go. Pola just sending another volley over to the middle Russian battlecruiser here. And I really don't know how this is going to end. Ricochet again? We're at 17.5 clicks. They can pen 37 inches of deck, but they appear to be hitting main belts. The muzzle velocity is quite high, and at 17.5 kilometers you can supposedly pen 41 inches of armor. I don't know exactly how much armor the Russian ships have. They are definitely capable of taking a hit. They have armor quality bonuses, and of course they're angled, which means that these ships find themselves at a bit of a disadvantage when trying to deal damage. Let's see, how good is the chance to pen? Oh, turrets. Bit of the bow and stern. Superstructure. That much I predicted. I have about a 50-50 chance to pen. That could be dangerous to the Austro-Hungarians, and the Sisyphus Prime is definitely on the receiving end of that. She's been hit. Seemingly just below her turrets, which is a very dangerous spot to get hit. Thankfully, the ship doesn't have a whole lot of flash fire chance. So that could save her. Boink. 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 All the shells ricocheting off the ship here. Armor holding for now. Pola just about ready to fire. Here she goes. Secondaries are opening up. Interesting. The Russians, I imagine, also have... Oh, they got torpedo range now, but the Russians only have side-mounted torpedo launchers underwater. So they're not as likely to fire those, because you'll have to be fully broadside onto the enemy. I'm not sure if I would really want to be broadside onto the enemy, considering the enemy is sporting 18-inch guns. It doesn't seem like a great way to start your day. It does seem like a great way to end your day. Range has decreased to 13 kilometers, and probably even less to the lead ship here, 12.7. But as the AI somehow always seems to favor the chance of getting shots on the namesake of the ship, the namegiver of the class, this ship is taking a lot of fire, yet virtually no damage. Look at that difference in hit rate. Allies 3.3, so the Austro-Hungarian ships barely hit anything. The Russians twice as much. But once these Austro-Hungarian shells actually start to go through, I think we'll see that balance level out very, very quickly. Because an 18-inch like this can hit really hard. You're looking at about 4,000 points of damage with AP, up to potentially 10,000 with HE, but I generally don't trust those numbers that much. Because, well, most of the time, the numbers that you actually get are either way higher or way lower, but they're generally not what is advertised. What are you guys shooting? Yep, high explosive 5.5s. We're getting some pretty good accuracy now, about 13 to 15%. Range, 11 clicks. And the torpedo launchers from the Austro-Hungarian can also start to come into play, especially as the lead is in range. There we go, damage to the main gun. But the Sisyphus is taking a lot of damage. She's down to 50% structural integrity. She is turning back to fall in behind the Loudon, and that means no further firepower from her 18s. Torpedo launchers appear to be trying to rotate, but the ship is turning far faster than torpedo launchers can keep up with. These torpedo launchers are trying to lock onto a ship. Well, I mean not lock on, more like aim. Ah, there we go. This is what I mean. When you get one of those hits in with an 18, you suddenly do 2,500 points of damage. And that puts at least the Austro-Hungarians somewhat on par with the Russians. They just need to do that a few more times and they can wipe out one battlecruiser. Much like, essentially, they have lost a battlecruiser. That is partial pens, main tower overpen, forebelt overpen. Yeah, this is kind of the problem with the 18s and this level of pen. We're talking about 9 kilometers and change, so let's round that up and say we got 58 inches of armor pen. That's how much damage we can do. If you don't have that level of armor, you're likely to see over-penetration. The shell is going to fly in one side, out the other, and simply refuses to do a whole lot of damage. If it hits. Oh, we got torpedo launchers coming into play. That is a nice bouquet from the Pola. She turns away. Why are you doing that? That is going to cause you some serious harm and a lack of DPS. That's an interesting choice. So, how's the Sisyphus? Sisyphus is still fighting. She's taken a very serious hit to her buoyancy, but she's alive. And she's still able to bring those guns to bear. Pola is also taking a lot of damage from the Russians now. I'm expecting the Loudon to throw torps. It does look like the Russians, for now, are oblivious to the threat that's racing their way at 67 knots. These torpedoes are 3.6 clicks out, 3.5, 3.4. They are doing damage to the Austro-Hungarian torpedo launchers, though. And it does look like the Russians are aware and all ships are turning around. Which, in this case, is really good news for the Austro-Hungarians, because it means that for now, they can do some damage. And the Russians can't. The Russians are going to have to use their 8-inchers. This is why I picked this particular opponent, because this way, it's sort of even. If the Russians turn away, they can't fire. If the Austro-Hungarians turn away, they can't fire. We're going to see which of these bow-oriented battleships, or sorry, battle cruisers, is better. Does look like the... oh, there we go. Loudon was refusing to fire. We're definitely going to see one hit out of that. Whether that will actually do anything? Yeah, not much. Not much at all. Shell was blocked. Turrets from the Russians are turning. Loudon sending torpedoes would be a great opportunity to give the Russians another problem. Force them to evade again. And make sure that the Austro-Hungarians get a bit more time to level the playing field, because they're about halfway towards the damage that the Russians have done. The Russian 8-inchers are really adding up. 1,250 damage, and the Austro-Hungarian 5-inchers are not exactly doing much. They are setting fires. So in that sense, yes, they're helpful. They're helpful. But the Belarus really isn't burning that badly. She has been turned around. Her guns are ready to fire. The A turret is looking a bit worse for wear, but it is functional. And we almost had a ram there from the Russians. But unfortunately, slash fortunately, the game doesn't have friendly ramming damage anymore. Incoming salvo on the Polo. Nope, missed it. Here's the Krasnodar. Look at that damage, we're pretty even. The Austro-Hungarians are pulling it back. Krasnodar is now really suffering from all the fires that she's having to deal with. Oh, she also sent torps a while ago. Laudon and Sisyphus really should be launching torps at 8.5 clicks out. It would really throw the Russians for a loop, forcing them to turn, forcing them to give up DPS, and making sure the Austro-Hungarians get a few more shots without being challenged. Vladivostok engaging the Pola. Belarus somewhat listing. Look at the damage on that main turret. It looks like that thing took an 18-inch to the face and lived. Ooh, you got away lucky there, dude. Laudon is locked in on the Krasnodar. Oh shit, that was a lot of damage. Pola took a big salvo there, causing immense loss of structural integrity, rudder loss, flooding. The engine was damaged, but it has been fixed. This should ricochet most of it. Yeah, but not all of it. And that's more flooding on the ship. As things stand right now, the Austro-Hungarians are going to need a couple of really big hits in order to pull this back. Ooh, there goes your rudder again. Buoyancy's dropping on the Pola. Laudon's the only healthy ship that they have now. Sisyphus Prime is about halfway. And the Pola is actually in far worse shape now than the Sisyphus Prime. Here comes the salvo. Seems to be going absolutely nowhere. I think that was meant for the Krasnodar, but yeah. No, it was meant for the Vladivostok? Wow. I recommend you get a refund on that salvo, because that was awful. Let's see, can you hit the Vladivostok now? Yeah, not really. Just fell short. I'm surprised to see that the 18s are performing so poorly. Because these are good guns. I think they got 2% additional barrel length. So yeah, they won't be astronomically accurate, but they will be pretty much a bunch more accurate than normal. Laudon trying to get our guns onto the target, which is the Belarus. But the ship is turning to port, and these turrets, seeing as they're heavy, don't turn that very quickly. 1.4 degrees per second, leaving the Laudon awfully exposed to secondary and primary fire from the Russians. Ooh. Oh wow, that all splashed into the water. You got away lucky there. Sisyphus, if you have any torpedoes left, I think now would be a phenomenal opportunity, seeing as the range is 4 kilometers. The Russians do have sonar 1, so they will get ample warning. It's not looking good for the Austro-Hungarians. Laudon, which was their only healthy ship, is taking a beating and is angled away. Sisyphus Prime angled away, and the Pola, I think she's still trying to bring those 18s around. But it's almost like they're trying to hand crank these turrets because they're not doing very well. And on top of that, the whole stern is underwater, so she might have an issue with getting the guns on target in the first place. She's still flooding. Her buoyancy's down to 22%. There we go. She stopped the flooding. And she's still fighting. She's engaging Vladivostok, which is perfectly healthy up till now, and those 18s just splashed harmlessly into the water. No damage there. Sisyphus Prime turning around. With these ships turning so much, I feel the Austro-Hungarians are losing out on so much potential damage because the 18s simply won't have time on target. Pola is probably going to find her demise. She's lost 22% of her crew. Her shells just splash near the Krasnodar, but don't actually deal any kind of damage. And the Sisyphus and Loudon are turning so much. Loudon, once again, trying to bring her turrets around, but as these guys keep jockeying for position and swing their turrets left and then right and then left and then right, they keep losing out on shots. Accuracy for the Austro-Hungarians is 15% versus 20% for the Russians. But the Russians just deal so much damage with those 15s. And I think the Pola is done for. Her buoyancy is failing. The ship's down to 1% buoyancy and is going down. Leaving a very badly bruised Loudon and Sisyphus Prime to try and fend for themselves. But considering the state of the Loudon, I think it'll only take a minute or two to take her down. And even if she's able to finally get those turrets to point at the enemy, I think they'll be pointing down much more than at the enemy. The torpedo launchers on these ships, much like on almost all the other contestant ships that we've seen, feel like an entirely lost opportunity. They're a nice idea, but the game doesn't know how to execute on that idea. They just don't do anything. Loudon, 12% buoyancy. Ship's burning, has lost almost 30% of her crew. Sisyphus Prime, slightly better condition. But I'm sure the Russians are working hard to make sure that's no longer going to be true. The damage done by the Austro-Hungarians is about 9,300, but it's 30,000 for the Russians. And this is... everything's missing from these guns. What's the accuracy on these 18s? 3.5. So far, they've hit about 7% of their shots. So, look at the stats. It's kind of lying. You got 14% as the overall accuracy. But they've only managed to land 21 18-inch hits and 425 5-inchers. Yet those 5-inchers don't really contribute anything to the fight. So, you're seeing stats that says 7.5% chance, or 7.5 hits here. 30% with a 5-inch. For the Sisyphus Prime, it's probably something similar. It's 1.9%. And then the secondaries did 11 and 12. The torpedoes, I don't think have hit anything. They haven't hit anything. They're still trying, though. Loudon launched torps, but I'm not sure at what. Because these torps just came out of the Sisyphus. And the Pola did not absorb a whole lot of torpedoes. So I'm not sure where the torpedoes from the Loudon have gone. Oh, here. They've already transited and are sailing harmlessly past. And considering the course of the Vladivostok, I think they won't really care about these torps either. So, this ship... oh, there we go. Ramming the Pola. Don't worry, she's already dying. You don't need to help her. Loudon finding herself, even at 6.5 kilometer range, unable to hit targets. Port side launcher from the Sisyphus. Sending torps. Most likely against the Belarus. Which probably spots them almost instantaneously. And is also going to warn her sister Krasnodar that there is trouble afoot. And that they need to change position. Ideally in a hurry. Oh, that's a nice shot. 2,655 damage. If these 18s actually land a hit, they perform. But they simply were not able to do that a whole lot. Land those hits. Here we go. The torpedoes are forcing the Russians to steer away from the conflict. And the torpedoes don't seem to do much beyond forcing a evasive maneuver on the Russians. Sisyphus Prime, now the last one standing. She's still fighting. Unfortunately, shells splashing just short of the Vladivostok. At that hit, they might have been able to take that ship down. Range is 6 kilometers. If she can land like 2 hits, she might be able to take the ship out. But she's listing to starboard. Come on. Yeah, that was a good amount of damage there. Ship's badly burning. She's flooding. But the Russians are prepared to take flooding. They have lost really relatively few of their crew at only 18%. And the Sisyphus is down to 23. Sisyphus is going to turn around again. Once again, leaving those 18s effectively out of the fight. And having all the work done by the 5-inchers. Which, well, can't do that. They cannot do the work, because they don't have the firepower. Sisyphus going for a full turn. I'm not sure what she's doing. The AI works in mysterious ways, but soon it won't work. Because either her structural integrity will fail, or her buoyancy. Or both. It looks like it's going to be buoyancy issues. Yep, there she goes. So that's a 3-0 for the Russians. You don't see that very often. Generally, the Russians actually survive. Generally the Russians are the ones sinking. But this time around, the Belarus-class battlecruisers did very well. And unfortunately, the Sisyphus Prime, interesting design as it is, did not pull through. That is a couple of expensive ships going down. And a victory to the Russians. Unfortunately for them, it does not count. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. And if you want to have your own ship featured in a video, you can. That round is going to be ending soon, though. You can still have it added on the Patreon. Go to my Patreon page, linked down below in the description. Pick the tournament special tier. And for only a few days more, you can get your own ship featured against one of the tournament contestants. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon for more battles.